Hi everyone and welcome back to Chess for Charity. In this video, I'm going to show two amazing mate in 2 problems that are really difficult. So I just love how tough these are. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So just take note of the position. So all these pawns are going down the board. Right? These are threatening to promote in just one move. So if you think about what's happening here, the bishop is currently attacking this king through the rook, right? So if I can somehow move the rook, that would be check. And right now, my knight is defending this out square. This knight is covering this. We have the queen kind of coming across. This bishop is defending the knight. So a lot of squares are hit, right? If you just look at all these arrows, look at that, right? This king is completely covered. So there's a mate in 2 here. And let's try to see if we can figure out how to think about getting there. So like I mentioned before, this bishop is currently on the right diagonal here. So let's just say, for example, you say, oh, we'll just move this rook. If you move this rook, I don't know, here or anywhere, you might think that's mate. Well, let's just see that. So if I check, what happens? So I'm currently attacking the king, and I'm cutting off the out square, but the piece that's giving check can just be captured straight away. And in this position, it's actually black who is winning. So, not working out. Right? Everything is covered. There's no mate for white. So you say, okay, so that's kind of the problem with moving the rook. If I move the rook, then the bishop will just get captured because there's not a place I can move that defends the bishop at the same. Like if I could put the rook here somehow, right, then that would defend the bishop. But of course, I can't jump over this rook. So you say, okay, that would be a nice thing to have. So how can I make that condition happen? And this is kind of leads to the brilliant move that if you find it, then you see how it all works together. So the move is, and I'll tell you in just a moment, the move is queen to f3. Now that might not have been on your radar at all, which is kind of what makes these puzzles amazing. Now, remember I said the point is to get this bishop defended, right, with this rook. Well, yeah, that makes sense. Another way of saying that is remove the attacker of this bishop. So the main line here is that if queen takes, now I can move my rook, right here, I can move my rook out of this diagonal so that here in particular, e4 in particular, so that the queen can't interpose, and that is mate. Sweet. So you say, okay, that's if they take, right? What if they don't take? What if they take with the rook instead? Because they see that whole thing. They want to keep it going. Well, remember what I said. If we could somehow put the rook here, it'd be mate. Well, that is exactly what we do, right? The queen can't interpose on these dark squares. This rook can't interpose. Nothing can interpose in this diagonal. So that's mate. Crazy, right? All these pieces. You have 2 rooks and a queen. Nothing can happen. So what other line do you want to look at, you might think? So maybe you say, I recognize that you could take my piece, and I recognize that I could capture it both ways and I lose. What if I just capture the bishop straight away and said, I'm not even going to take it? Well, whole nother problem is that this is actually mate, knight b4, because the out square is covered here, the queen is covering the knight, and the knight is covering this square on b1. Crazy, right? So you say, okay, well, what else is there? Like, what if I back up? Is that going to be anything? Well, no, it's the same mate with knight b4. How am I covering this square? So what other line is there? Right, you take. Does that work? No. Again, knight b4 is mate because this is pinned. Crazy. This is crazy. Right? Look at the power of this bishop. This bishop is pinning the defending piece, and that's mate. So what other move is there? Is there even another move? So let's just say you did nothing, move a pawn, I don't know. Oh, let's say you promote. Let's do that. Let's say you promote to this one. How is that stopping the knight b4? It's not. Look at this position. Crazy. 2 queens and 2 rooks, and you're still getting mated without this bishop even doing anything. Crazy. I love that. So that is one really cool puzzle. Now let's do the second one. So the second one, we go here, And again, it's white to move and mate in 2 moves. Again, it is tough. So if you find it, great. If not, that's okay too. So let's just kind of take stock of the position. So notice that the queen is currently pinning this knight, so the knight cannot move like this. It can't give mate right away. So you say, okay, the rook is kind of attacking here. This rook is attacking. This queen is attacking. This pawn, I guess, is supporting. So you say, okay, how do I make this happen? I would like to get my queen to here to give mate if this rook was somehow defended or if I still had these squares covered. So you say, what if I just move the rook out of the way, maybe like this, and kind of kept everything defended, and the threat is rook takes, or rook here. And that's a good move, and you'll still end up winning, but it's not mate in 2, right? The challenge is mate in 2, because they could take here, and then what do? This is not mate because they just take, right? Okay. So you say, okay, I can't go there. What if I went back one more square? What if I move forward? What if I went here, right? To think about all these different rook moves that would get your piece out of the way so you can deliver mate here. And then you think, well, is there a different way? What if I tried to block the pin? What if I did something like getting the pin out of the way? Like maybe here, right, with the queen? And that doesn't really make sense either because the queen can take, the rook can take. You're not going to deliver mate next move because this is still hanging. So it seems like this one, you have to move the rook. And you go, okay, well, if I move the rook, let's just say to d8 with the threat of queen to f4 mate. How do I defend this? Well, remember, the challenge is mate in 2. Well, how do you prevent this square from being mate in 2? Well, queen f2 will guarantee that mate is not in the next move. You can check me, but it's not mate in 2. It's actually mate in a couple more. So let's see. It would be mate in 1. Right? This is mate. Yep, that's mate. This is covering. Look at that. This is covering that square. Queen's covering this square. Rook's covering. Look at that. Just like getting sliced. Okay. So the problem is that the queen can interpose here. Okay, so that's not what I want. So what about this one? Let's try the other square. So again, I'm threatening, right now, I'm threatening queen to f4 mate. So how do they stop that? So queen d4 is the best move because what that does is that allows the king an out square. If I go check, it's no longer mate in 1. It'll be mate in a few more, but it's not going to be mate in 1. Right? Rook takes is the best move here because you can't take this. There's a pin. Okay. So then you say, okay, what is the move then? And this one is kind of interesting because now the move is actually rook d7. Right? You went through all these squares and you say like that. You say, which one of these makes the most sense? Rook d7 makes the most sense because now, let's just say, for example, you did this same thing. Knight d6 is actually mate because this is double check. Crazy, right? Look at that. The queen is just a threat, but it's not the thing that ends up killing you, right? One of the beautiful chess quotes is that the threat is more powerful than the execution, right? It's one of those things. If you don't know that quote, you got to get to it. Fun chess quote. So that's the move. Rook d7, and I want to stop this mate, but I also have to stop this one if the queen moves. So, I don't know, if I went here, just to try to block up something, try to keep the pin going, well, that's not going to address this threat, right? So you have 2 threats that are really killer. By moving the rook here, you have a queen threat, and if this queen ever moves off of this line, you have this knight threat. It's amazing because this queen is covering right there, and the rook is covering all these. Even if you block, with the knight, the queen is still covering. Amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So that's pretty much it. Let's just imagine one more line, I guess. If we go check, I should have said that. So that looks great, right? How am I getting mated? Well, here's the thing. I am going to check you with my knight. And you might, how is this check? That's not how check works. Yes, it is. The bishop is checking you. It's a discovered check. This is actually mate. Because again, the rook is holding that square. The queen is holding that square. Queen's holding this. Bishop is holding the whole diagonal. It's lovely. Awesome. So that is it. Those are 2 tough puzzles. If you got those, that's amazing. You're a fantastic chess player. I didn't. I'll tell you that. That's what made me make this video. I love how they look. I love the quiet move to start it, which is why I'm like, man, rook, who is that? Who is thinking rook d7? The other one in particular, the queen f3, that's crazy. But yeah, that's awesome. So that's it for this video. If you enjoy the content, be sure to like on YouTube and consider subscribing. Thanks so much. Bye.